Hey, what's up everybody? This is Phil with the Vocal Blueprint. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Today, I'm going to be breaking down the methods and techniques that I used to sing Outshined by Soundgarden in part 1 of this series. I hope that you find this video super useful and informative for your progress as a singer and performer. Chris Cornell is one of my biggest influences and was a huge catalyst in my progress as a performer when I discovered him in a band called Audioslave at the tender age of 15, and I have not looked back ever since. And obviously, this past year was incredibly tragic hearing about his loss, and he was certainly one of the greatest voices that ever graced this earth, and it is very, very sad to know that he is now no longer with us. So this video is done in tribute to him so that his legacy may live on in other singers. And with that intent, let's go ahead and get ourselves started on how to sing like Chris Cornell, part numero dos. All right. This is part 2 of how to sing like Chris Cornell. So let's go over a few housekeeping notes before we get into this. First of all, this is a very advanced contemporary song. It is on the side of the spectrum where there's a lot of vowel modification. The vowels are super dominant over the consonants. There's a lot of vowel, what I like to call homogenization, which means that the vowels start sounding the same as you go higher in pitch. We'll go over a lot more of that in detail in this video. Also, huge disclaimer here. I want to make sure that you watch this part of the video before you skip ahead. This is, as I said, a very advanced song. So take this advice at your own risk. Make sure that you consult a professional, either a very seasoned singer, your voice coach if you're seeing someone, or even someone who is a doctor, a ears, nose, and throat specialist before implementing this advice. Otherwise, you do so at your own risk, because I cannot be there in person to help you with this unless we are working one-on-one. So this is just a word of caution before we move on here, because I want to make sure that you don't interpret this information incorrectly, because doing so could mean vocal damage, and I would hate for that to happen. So that's why I feel obligated to tell you to use common sense and use reason. If you feel like something is hurting, something is off, don't continue watching this video. Make sure that you get yourself corrected and realigned, and that you are processing the information correctly. So, and of course, if any of you have any questions whatsoever about what I'm about to go over, please put them in the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer them in as quickly a fashion as possible. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's dive into it. And first and foremost, the very first thing that I'm going to talk about is my face and what I'm doing with that. So given that, you can see, and I'm going to turn this down so that way you can hear me here a little bit better, that I'm showing my teeth consistently, that my jaw movement is very smooth, that there's not a lot of this. I'm not pulling it down, because your jaw can really get in the way, especially when you're hitting very, very high notes. Things are looking so good. You know that thing that I was talking about, vowel modification. Vowel modification is very, very important. Vowel homogenization is a very, very important thing, especially when you're singing a song like this. So I'm going to pause it here. Cool. Awesome. It worked. Yes. Technology, Bluetooth. Awesome. So going into more detail about that lift that you're seeing, the fact that I'm doing this on the top, when you sing it in a lower register, it sounds ridiculous. It sounds like I'm from the valley. However, when you pull it up into those higher registers, into those higher octaves, it sounds right. Because the thing that's more important when you're up in a higher range, especially if you have a natural pistachio that's down in the baritone range, when you pull those vowels up and start to homogenize them, that allows for the vowel to get out in a healthier way, rather than trying to pronounce it in an articulation that would be demanded by, say, an operatic song. So that's the reason why when you try singing in these higher registers as maybe like a bass 1 and implement articulation that's from the traditional side of the spectrum, this can certainly be very damaging to your voice. So it is absolutely imperative that you lift and that you homogenize the vowels as you're going up into the higher registers, especially around the G4, A4 area and getting into your mixed tone. So let's keep going here. Let's talk about oohs. Oohs. Okay. Oohs and e's are really tough on the top. Really, really tough on the top. So it's like, you know, doing ooh, like hitting that, you know, hitting that C5 there in chest voice or in your mixed tone. That is, oh, sucky. So let's go over some ideas on how to get the most out of your voice when you're hitting an ooh or an E on that top. So, and if you end up cracking, if you end up going for this and it's not working, you know, give yourself patience. You know, work in lower registers like ooh, and then ooh, ooh, and just build up to it. Now, here are some ideas when you go to implement that exercise where you're going just a little bit higher each time. You don't want the ooh to come from the bottom, like ooh. You can see that's pulling the larynx down, and you need. And here's the thing: there's no such. I want you to break the idea that high larynx is a bad thing and low larynx is a good thing, or vice versa, because your larynx has to be high for certain styles and your larynx has to be low. It has for certain styles. It's about the spectrum. I want you to think in terms of ratios and spectrums. There is such a thing as a larynx that goes too low and such a thing as a larynx that goes too high. It's about having the flexibility in your larynx to go up and down within a certain way, and to also regulate the speed in which it drops and which it lifts. So I want you to make sure that you have a big takeaway here. It's not about having a high larynx or a low larynx. It's about the balance between the two and how you transition between the two. And homogenizing the vowels have a big role to play in larynx positioning, letting it go up and down in a healthy way. Because if your larynx pops up way too quickly because your jaw is moving too quickly and you're not homogenizing your vowels, that's when a lot of damage can happen. It's about letting the ebb and flow occur. So hopefully that clarifies that. Now, you're probably wondering, and I haven't covered it yet in this video, so I'm going to right now. Where is the distortion coming from? Where is that oh coming from? Well, first of all, it starts in the abdominal cavity. It starts in the place where your obliques, your back, your obliques, and your abdominal muscles sit. These are incredible support networks for your lungs, for your voice, for your bronchial tubes, that when you activate those and squeeze, usually you squeeze in and up to get those notes to occur. You create the sound pressure that goes up into your bronchial tubes, up into your mask, and then you shape your mask in such a way so that way your soft palate is catching the air in such a way that it just slightly rattles a little bit. So you don't want it to be too loose, otherwise it will irritate the back of the mouth too much. But you also don't want it to be pulled back too far, because then it'll be a clear sound, like oh, like that. So here's a little tip to create that distortion. So if you want to add just a little bit of crunch without going too hard, here's one thing that you can do that has proved very useful for me. So watch the difference and listen. Oh! So my soft palate is in the same position. It's right above my larynx. I'm in proper head position. But as you can see, my face is a little different. When I'm clean, I lift the eyebrows. When I want a little bit of distortion, I scrunch. The pressure that occurs when I scrunch my facial muscles allows for the sinus cavities and the rest of the mask to kind of compress against the soft palate, which is coming up here, which causes that that rattle to occur. And that is something that can not just happen in your chest voice, it can also happen in your mix. Oh! And that is mix, ladies and gentlemen. That is, and essentially what mix is just a modified head voice. That's what it is. So make sure that you're not doing that up in chest when you get into your mixed tone. I can go into further detail in another video, but just make sure that you understand the difference between chest and head voice and the mixed tone and what it is. So But that's a little tip for you. You know, the scrunching oh, will give you that nice crushing distortion, just a little bit of crunch there. So let's move on to the next part of this video. And I'm just going to bring this up here. So, and hopefully you can hear the track. Let's go over something else. So you, I forget if I already covered this in the video because I'm starting to like, it's all starting to, I've done a couple of takes of this video, so it's all starting to, you know, mesh together. So anyway, the ooh vowel is, if I had already mentioned this, I'll just cover it briefly. Those are very, very hard to sing, especially when you have such little room in the back of the mouth. So when you go, ooh, you want to make sure that you're taking the ooh from the top and that you're getting that scrunch in. If it's coming from the bottom, like ooh, it's not as healthy and it's actually going to put things out of alignment. So you want to make sure that you're scrunching the mask and bringing it up to the tops, just kind of like scooping over, jumping over, following through. Very, very important that you understand that, especially with your E and ooh. So just make sure that that is implemented whenever you try to go for those very narrow vowels. Okay, so moving on. And you can see that the shape of my vowels are essentially very similar, that I'm not moving really quickly with my jaw. There's a lot of chewing on the phrase. Yeah, like that. That is very, very key. So making sure that you strengthen this area of the face is very, very key. That is mix, incredibly enough. So learning how to transition between the mix and the chest tone is very, very key as well. So let's talk about that. So, you know, going from, it would be good to know where the limit of your chest voice is for now. So like, for example, whoa! Right around a C5 is where I have to end up going up into my mix. Oh! And that's my mix tone right there. So I end my chest tone around a C5, and then D5 is right around where I start getting into my mix tone, which is that really compressed head voice. So knowing where your transition is going to really help you as well. So that way you can, and here's one thing that I want to make sure that you understand, that it's very subtle changes that occur within your breath support in order to transition between those two spaces, because you don't want it to be like, oh, you want it to be consistent. You want the bridge to occur. Oh, whoa! So there's always going to be a little bit of a break there, but it's something where you don't want to release the pressure in your abdominal muscles completely when you go to transition. So it's actually keeping the pressure in your abdominal muscles and getting the sound pressure to stay consistent will actually really help with your transitions from your mixed tone into your chest voice. So keep that in mind as you're going up and down. Whoa! You want to keep that consistent down here. Obviously, there's certain things that change within the muscular structure and modifications in the shape of certain muscles on a very, very minute scale. But the general thing to keep in mind is that you want to keep the support consistent. That's why I keep saying it and repeating it over and over again to get back and forth between those two. So let's keep going. Went a little sharp there, sorry. This is so meta, like watching myself. Truth. Yeah, that's a perfect example. That is a perfect example of homogenizing the vowel. Truth is. Truth. It's truth. Truth is. So if I sang it like, they'll show you where the truth is, you can hear how ridiculous that is when I'm singing it an octave lower than the actual song. But they'll show you where the truth is. It sounds great on the top, and then I'm going into the grass is always greener. Let me sing that an octave down. The grass is always greener. It sounds so ridiculous. It's so you're probably thinking, God, all these rock stars have been playing a trick on me, man. They all don't know how to speak English. All talking like this. And I think it's so amazing, but it is still amazing. It's just that, our brain plays a trick on us and we hear words. But the vowels, when you break them down phonetically, they sound ridiculous. And when you bring them down an octave, it's sort of like, I guess it's sort of like hypersonic laughing that mice. They've actually done studies where they've tickled mice and they actually do laugh, but you have to bring the sound down. You have to slow down the sound in order to hear it because it's outside of the range of human hearing. So it's which is interesting because when you bring down the octaves of what you're actually saying phonetically, it sounds super goofy and ridiculous. But when it's way up on that top, it sounds awesome. So I mean, and in generally speaking, I'm not talking about myself here. I'm not trying to say, oh man, I'm just hitting those notes like super rad. No, come to your own conclusions here. I am not trying to promote my abilities or say that I'm awesome at this, that, or the other thing. I simply know that I love this song. I love what Chris has done, and I want to pay tribute to him through this and spread the knowledge and love and wisdom of singing properly and in a fun and happy way. So yeah, that's okay. I'm getting off the soapbox now. Back to what really matters here. The topic, the thing that we're and you have to also be very, very comfortable, and I've said this in previous videos, with making really weird faces. Yeah. Now, there's a lot. Now, one thing I want you to keep in mind, that there may be an illusion. You may think that I'm moving my jaw really quickly. It's actually an illusion. If you put your hand on the screen over my mouth, you can see, and if you can still see the jaw, you'll see that it moves a lot slower or it looks like it moves a lot more slowly in relation to my teeth, my tongue, and my lips. There's a lot going on here. That's where the dominant fast movement is occurring, where the transitions between the vowels. Now, something else to keep in mind, what you may encounter as you're singing this song is that you start cracking on certain notes. You start like trying to get to certain places and you get this and splatting sound. What that has to do with is your tongue placement. Your tongue position has to do with that. So you want to experiment with the sweet spot. What I usually recommend to my students is that you place the tongue, the tip of the tongue right along the gum line of your front teeth. It may look, for certain people, it may look like it's retracting. You just want to make sure that it's not pressing down so much that you get the Kermit sound, which can interact negatively with the larynx. So you want to get that nice sound. Oh, and then that will allow for a slight ridge in the back of the tongue and allow for the voice to resonate upon the hard and soft palate very nicely. Now, another thing to keep in mind, and I'll talk about this as this goes, you always want to be very aware of the resonance along the roof of your mouth, where your soft palate is, that flapper muscle in the back of the mouth, which I've talked about in previous videos, and also the hard palate as well. It is a system of resonance. So here's one thing that you can do if you're struggling with power and you feel like you're projecting out too much. One thing that you can do is you can actually cup your ears like this and listen to the resonance and be aware of the resonance in your head. You want to, this is something that I've told my students as well. Rather than pushing out towards the room and paying attention to the resonance in the room, I asked them to think of a miniature theater, a miniature 2-story theater that sits here, right here in the sinus cavities and the resonance spaces in their head. To pay attention to that and project towards that, and use the hard and soft palate as the resonator for those areas to allow vibration to occur, and to be aware of what occurs when you do that, when you place the energy upward towards this area. You'll find, what I've found with students is that their resonance, the richness of their tone, their ability to perform vibrato becomes a lot more natural when you locate and understand what happens in the face, rather than trying to get the sound out. Push up first, as I always say as well. Technique over volume. Can't stress that enough. Moving on. Okay, there we go. That was hard to get move between those two vocal parts. One thing that I also want to mention, and we might not get through the entire song today, but I mean, I'll try to get to the end as much as I can. I don't want this video to be like 1,000,000 hours long. So the other thing that you want to also keep in mind is that you don't want to, you obviously have to breathe. That's very, very important. But a thing to keep in mind as you're doing that is that you want to tie your words together. If there is a situation, gives me the butterflies, if you can allow those to blend and stretch together, that will save a lot of energy for your voice, rather than going, gives me the butterflies, like, you know, trying to be percussive with your voice. If you tie them together, tie the phrases together and think of them as like a hashtag, and where it all, you know, there's no separation between the words, it's essentially the same thing. So just keep that in mind, that that's something that can really, really save you some time and energy, because it's keeping everything consistent. It's keeping the breath support consistent, and it's keeping your phrasing consistent as well. You're riding on the wave rather than trying to catch a different wave every single word and chopping it up. Chopping up things can be really, really detrimental to your performance and to your voice if done over a long period of time. Let me hit the button here. Also, one thing that you can do, and you know, I've said this somewhat in the past, but I do want to encourage. Okay, so that was in mixed voice. That's a perfect example of that going on. So, and you can see I'm a little bit more relaxed as I'm lowering my voice. All right, so let me go ahead and pause this because I want to go over one thing. Oh, nice face, Phil. Anyway, oh no, I lost my train of thought. Isn't that wonderful? So I'm not going to delete this video. I'm too far in it. It's too late. It's too late to say sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry now. I just sang some Bieber. Anyway, so you know, as you are going up into your top registers, as you're mixing together, as you're doing these things back and forth, you know, you want to keep in mind everything that we've talked about. I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. It'll probably come back to me as we go on through this, but let's go ahead and I'm sorry. Let's keep going here. That's what it was. Okay, if you see my veins popping once in a while, that's something that you want to avoid if, and only if, you're seeing that constantly, like over and over and over again. If you are reaching the end of a phrase that's incredibly high and incredibly high demanding, you're going to see that once in a while. So don't like freak out if you see that happen. You know, it's like having a high performance car. You know, if the Ferrari can go 180 miles an hour, push it to 180 miles an hour. It might reach red line really, like, you know, in a certain gear, but then if you let go and put it back into neutral, guess what? You're going to be just fine. It's designed to do that stuff. I remember in that take, I knocked the microphone and forgot a phrase there, so I forgot about that. I'm just a goofball. Oh, there's my armpit. It smelled probably really bad that day too. So, yeah. And something else, I will happily admit that I was starting to get fatigued at this point. I think this was the second time going through. You can hear that. Oh, it was just a little bit less powerful than it was the first time. Because here's another thing. No live take is ever going to be absolutely phenomenally over the top perfect without some type of processing, without some type of, without some cutting and pasting. What you hear in professional music, what you hear on albums these days is very, there's multiple takes. It's only taken at certain phrases. So you are going to experience some type of fatigue when you sing live, especially with this type of singing. I know that with 3-hour sets with my band, I have to be very, very, very keen on the amount of movement that I do up on stage, the amount of water intake that I have had that day, my warm-ups. All these things have to align perfectly in order for me to proficiently perform for that amount of time and keep the quality of voice that's necessary to do so. So, just keep that in mind, that fatigue will happen. And that as long as you can speak the next day, as long as you can perform normal songs on a regular basis, like the next day, say that you have like another show coming up and you feel that you can do things just fine after warming up properly and getting enough water intake, that's something not to be concerned about. The time to be concerned is if you can't speak the next day, if you have a sore throat, if you have symptoms like coughing and you're having a hard time swallowing, and those symptoms occur on a more regular basis because of this type of singing that you're doing, that's when the red flag should be going up. That's when the bells should be ding, 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 and you should be going to an ENT to get things checked out, especially if the symptoms are autonomous. If they are not coupled with, a cold, for example. If it is just by itself, coughing and wheezing with, dry cough, and it happens after a show, that is something that you want to address immediately. Also, here's another thing, and just as a side note, if you want to check the quality of your voice, this is an amazing... I'm going to put a link in the description of an ear, nose, and throat specialist that's here on YouTube that has a really, really amazing little trick that you can use to test the damage to your voice if you've implemented any damage, which takes away all the technique out of the system and goes to the nitty-gritty of your vocal folds to see if they're adducting correctly, and possibly if there are any vocal notes, this can detect them before they become a majorly serious issue. So, given that, everybody, thank you so much for your patience, allowing me to find a way to record this video in the best way that I possibly could. I wanted to make sure that I was prepared and that I was able to give the information in the best possible way. If you enjoyed what I did here on this video, make sure that you like this video, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, make sure that you hit the little notification bell so that way you can get updates on when I post more content, because it is going to be more crap coming your way. Good crap, obviously. So that way you can continue to improve and find your voice. So with that said, everybody, always remember, practice makes progress, and I will see you all in the next video.
So now you know. Woo!